to have you back. In case you're just joining in, the program is Education Dialogue, reaching you from 92.3 Inspiration FM. My name is Elvis Boniface, and I am your host. Today we are looking at education matters, ensuring inclusion and access to quality education for all. So let's delve into it. What touches the lives of the child really in every family and society as a whole, and that is quality education. So, in a world where education is a fundamental right, we still face significant challenges. Many children are denied access to quality learning experiences due to a variety of factors, and you know it, whether it's social economic status, disability, or geographical location. And today we will explore that what inclusive education truly means, the barriers that exist, and the innovative strategies that can help us dismantle these obstacles. Joining us today is an educator with a difference, an advocate for inclusive education. I will just go through her profile. You know, she's a dedicated educator specializing in early years, foundation stage. If you're in education, EYFX, she's a Key Stage 1, KS1, and Key Stage 2. So, as a special educational news coordinator, SEND coordinator at where she works, which I will let you know soon. She's committed to enhancing the educational experiences of children with educational needs. She has developed and implemented effective SEND strategies for policies, conduct assessments, and collaborations with teachers and parents to monitor student progress. She holds a PGCE from the University College London Institute of Education, and of course a certification from the University of Sunderland. She's also a certified special need therapist and a certified behavior analyst in training. And I'm talking about no other person but Iyin. Welcome to Education Dialogue.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here to have this conversation because this is really an important conversation we should be having now because it's more, there's more awareness, and there are lots of children who need a lot of help. So we need to be talking about how we can help them within schools and outside schools as well.
You bet that. There's no better time than now to have that conversation. So I think first, as we open, well, let's begin by asking really, for educators, they probably know what inclusive education is all about. So what is inclusive education? What does it mean? And why is it important for us to have that conversation at this time?
So basically, in simple terms, inclusive education talks about identifying and then removing the barriers, for the child's learning. So thinking about how the barrier to their present, the barrier for their participating, barrier for them achieving as well, removing that. So how do we include them, not including them outside of the classroom, but including them together with every other child as they learn? And why is it important? I mean, every child deserves to have that education, which should be everyone's main focus. But then again, it helps for every child to have that real learning opportunity. No child should feel left out.
Truly.
No child should feel less than. So that's why inclusion is important.
Awesome. Let's look at the data for when we are discussing inclusion. The data from NEMIS is a bit scary. So let's take those statistics to share with us, highlighting the current state of access to quality education, especially for marginalized groups. What does the data say?
So I'll just be using data from UNICEF. So we all know that primary education, which is the first education every child has, is supposed to be free, and it's compulsory. However, that's not always the case. And according to the data, about 10.5 million of the children in this country, Nigeria, age 5 to 14, are out of school. And then only 61% of 6 to 11-year-olds regularly attend primary school. and only 35.6% of the children aged 36 to 59 months receive early childhood education. Now, a large portion of this percentage belongs to a lot of the states in the north, because in the north they have about a net attendance of about 53%. And then we also have the issue of the children who are out of school. Getting them back in school is also a huge challenge. So these are due to issues such as gender, where they are. Poverty is a huge factor that they face, and also cultural norms, economic barriers. So I would say that from the data, a large portion of the children out of school or who are at a disadvantage are really from the north. You find out a lot of children who are from this end, Igbo, Yoruba, Edo, they have higher completion rates than others as compared to those in the northern states.
Yeah, so that's the norm. That's the data. When you look at Nigeria from the six geopolitical region, if you listen to her rightly, the North has the highest number of marginalized children when it comes to access to education, inclusion, as it were. And then when you come down south, the middle belt, and as it were, we also have challenges. But let's look at, I mean, the challenges and barrier. Now, so what are exactly the challenges that educators, schools now face in implementing, inclusive education? We've seen the number very, very bad. What can we do from a school educator point of view?
Some of the challenges that schools faces, when you're doing the teacher training, there's no pre-service. The training doesn't cover inclusive education. So, for instance, if I go to a teacher training school, the curriculum does not cover inclusive. So then, as a teacher, I come into the classroom. I know how to teach, but do I know how to teach and include other children who have learning difficulties or challenge? I don't know how to do that. Also, which is a major thing really, because it can be a bit unfair to the teachers, because then they're expected to incorporate every child, their learning differences, their learning styles, which can be quite challenging. And also, teachers are not trained enough, because with education, things change. You need to really upskill quite regularly, very regularly, always be upskilling, seeing what is new with technology, seeing what is new with teaching. You can't be teaching the same way you were teaching like 10 years ago. You need to really change and upskill, upgrade. We don't have inclusive teaching methods in the schools. Not all schools can afford that. It's expensive to be inclusive. If we're being frank, not all schools can afford to have those things that they need to be in their classrooms or in their schools to accommodate that. There are not enough teachers. Teachers are resigning, because teaching can be a really thankless job. A lot of teachers are not appreciated. And then they face a lot of these challenges and they don't get enough support from schools. So these are just a few of the challenges that they face.
Super amazing. But I think somehow some universities are trying to strengthen their curriculum. But when we come back, we'll look at, in light of changing war, is there any role technology can play in bridging this gap, especially as more educators think they are being modern? We will take a quick break. When we come back, we will look at the place of tech and what are those things we can do as educators to enforce inclusive education.
Hello Lagos. Join us every Thursday right here on Inspiration 92.3 FM from 3:30 to 4 p.m. for Education Dialogue by Edugist. On Education Dialogue, we bring together policymakers, education leaders, and parents to discuss issues, explore solutions, and drive positive change. With Edugist, education has a voice.
Glad to have you back. In case you're just joining us, the program is Education Dialogue, reaching you from 92.3 Inspiration FM, and this is made possible by Scale Integrated Services. We have been discussing education matters, ensuring inclusive access to quality education for all children. And my guest in the studio has been Iyin Akinkugbe. She is a SEND coordinator at St. Saviour's College, Ikoyi. We have discussed different things. We've tried to let you know what inclusive education is all about. We have examined the problem. So now we are actually going to the place of tech. What role can tech play to fix some of these things? So first, what strategy do we recommend for schools to create inclusive education and the environment that actually drives this? Because there's policy on the one hand, but is the environment inclusive enough to foster this?
So it's one thing to have a policy, but then also you need to think about, is it actually being implemented and who is checking that? So that's something we face as a country. No one really checks. We have policies, all right, but how many states are actually doing this inclusion? So for schools, because inclusion is quite expensive, so you need to think around things that are cost effective, things you can do without spending so much money. And one thing would be to use model inclusive language around the school within the classroom so that other children understand the importance of inclusivity, including every child, so no one is left behind. And then also, it's important to connect with your students as a teacher, build that relationship, get to know them, get to know what they like. That way you can then teach them in a way that they would be able to access that learning. And also, with every school, have someone who is monitoring that inclusion. Otherwise, it gets lost because no one really checks for the children who aren't able to access the learning quickly enough. Develop inclusive classrooms if you can, as much as possible. Think about your layout of your classroom, make it accessible for all children. Think about your class size. That's also a way to include the children as well. And then also, you can work with small groups in the classroom. Even if they're, let's say, 25 in a class, you can take small groups at a time. That is also, a way you can model inclusion in class. And then with technology now, we have so many adaptive software and devices that help to assist the children, in terms of accessing that curriculum. So we have things like audiobooks, we have smart boards in the classroom, we have reader pens for the children who have dyslexia or have difficulties reading. So there's so many options available. And even on your normal laptop, your HP laptop, you have the option in Word, read to text. Yeah. So you speak to laptop and it types it out. For children who have like slow processing, they can use that option. Technology makes things fun in the class, more accessible. The children enjoy it, they like it. I know a lot of teachers are a bit afraid to use technology, maybe because of their lack of knowledge. And also using technology sometimes the children could be out of control. But you realize as time goes on and you have more structure within the classroom, accessing it is easier.
Awesome. We will look at, as we explore what tech does, we will look at challenges from a different dimension. You have parents, especially now when you talked about writing. We have parents that have literally interpreted this to be African, if you know what I mean. So when you have learning disability, they see it from a different dimension rather than going medical or trusting SEND experts like you. They rather want to explore spiritual methodologies for those children. Now, going back to marginalized communities when SEND is not a priority, how do we educate at that level that your child being disabled is not the end of the world?
So, as a country as a whole, we still have a long way to go in terms of awareness, even the educated. Because like I said, a lot of parents who are educated still, when you tell them that your child may have a learning disability, they're in denial, which is understandable because no parent would wish that for their child. So it's still something we experience, regularly. Talking about the children who are marginalized, more awareness really, going in there and maybe also bringing them out so that they can also go into schools that have children with learning difficulties so that they can see that having a learning disability is not the end of the world. Doesn't mean that you're less than, doesn't mean that you're being spiritually attacked or anything. but there is a way forward. And then a lot of children with learning disabilities do quite well, because you find out lots of people who are doing well, in other parts of the world. If you dig deeper, you might realize that they might have some sort of learning
Yeah, so
disability.
that's why the inclusive act said, rather than calling them children living with disability, is kids with ability. So, Lagos, it will be time for you to call into the studio to contribute, but we will take a quick break. When we come back, we will let you know the studio line and also how you can contribute on WhatsApp.
Hello Lagos. Join us every Thursday right here on Inspiration 92.3 FM from 3:30 to 4 p.m. for Education Dialogue by Edugist. On Education Dialogue, we bring together policymakers, education leaders, and parents to discuss issues, explore solutions, and drive positive change. With Edugist, education has a voice.
Welcome back. The program is Education Dialogue, reaching you from Inspiration 92.3 FM, and we've been discussing education matters, ensuring inclusion and access to quality education for all. My guest has been Iyin. She is a SEN and EYFS professional. In case you're tuning in and you want to be part of the conversation, studio line 0700 9293 923 923. There is a WhatsApp number where you can send in message to the studio 0817 313 6193. I take it again 0817 313 6193. And to call into the studio 0700 923 923 923. We will continue, and in case you have a call, we will be happy to take it. So, back to you. Let's look at future aspiration. We've identified the problem. We've seen what schools are actually doing. So, as a professional, there are few of you actually doing this, and we have other teachers in training or existing teachers that want to see how they can get into SEN. What is your future outlook from what should government do to improve inclusive education?
I'll just start with getting into special needs. So I've been in this for a number of years, and I've had to do several qualifications. And what I find now is, because the need seems to have gone a bit higher, there are a number of people who are now in SEND without the qualification. So that's something that we're facing as well. So in as much as there are not many SEND professionals, there are many people in SEND who don't have the qualification. So
interesting.
Yes, so that's an issue as well. So, and then because parents are not aware, we have that clash. And then because to go into SEND, you need to be able to, it's sort of specializing as a doctor. After being a general practitioner, you then specialize. So that's how it is. After being a teacher, then you do something separate. But then I started with my PGC, and then I went on to do some special needs training, and then I did the NASENCO, which makes me a qualified SENCO. So I did that. There are lots of free courses that I started with online, because a lot of these trainings are quite expensive, and I know a lot of people might not be able to afford that. So you could start off with something online that is not so expensive, and then volunteer. I did a lot of volunteer work before I then went on to do something as a postgraduate degree. And as a country, we still have a long way to go. I think what we should start with is, what can we do by ourselves first? I think as a smaller community, what can you do in your home, maybe in your church, in your office? How can you build the awareness? So now, I think now more is building the awareness, educating parents, educating schools on how we can, increase our inclusivity, not just in schools, but wherever we are, really. That's what we're looking at.
Before we take it home, two very important points you made. A lot of your certifications, not Nigerian, you had them abroad, and then it's expensive. Now, for a teacher listening to you in Nigeria, in Lagos, are there local places you can point them to increase their knowledge of inclusive education?
Yes, there are lots of. So one of the trainings I did actually was um, at a center called Patrick's. It's in GRA. So if you check
So
online,
that's in Maryland.
no, it's in GRA on Fanny Coyote. So I did a special needs training there, which was quite good. So, and that's more affordable as opposed to something outside of the country. And there are other centers that also do trainings. That more people are coming up now, so there are more options available. So if you can't access the ones that are abroad yet, I would say go for the ones here and build up your CV, build up your experience, and volunteer work is important as well.
Amazing. Volunteer work is important because experience you cannot buy. So as we take it home in one closing word for your expectation, what you see, just a closing thought.
Well, I look forward to more awareness in Nigeria as time goes on, where everyone doesn't look at inclusion as a burden or as a responsibility of educators, but as a whole community effort. That's what I look forward to. More capacity. I know it's difficult because we're losing a lot of teachers, but more capacity building and more supportive schools.
Thanks a lot, Iyin, for that final thought. It's been such an impactful moment. Having you on the Education Dialogue. Lagos, this is this bit for this week of Education Dialogue because this takes us to the end. As you can see, or as you've listened to us, inclusive education is a key pillar of the education conversation. It is time for us to begin to enforce this and to ensure that this is captured in our school. Education Dialogue is a production of Edugist, proudly made possible by Skilled Integrated Services. Join us same time on same station with a different topic and a different guest. For latest education news, insight, and interview, visit our website www.edugist.org. Follow us across social media on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We are at Edugist, and my name is Elvis Boniface. Until next week, have a good evening.